Thank you so much. Cheers. Thanks, Sarah. Cheers. Hey, good morning, everyone. As Sarah said, my name is Dave. I'm the founder and CEO of SenseOn. At SenseOn, we really focus on solving two key problems. The first one is routing your data intelligently, depending on the value and outcome from that data. And the second problem we've been focused on for a very long time is finding increasingly smaller signals and increasingly large volumes of noise. And today I'm going to talk about why we believe that to be particularly important. So we really do believe that security operations is at an inflection point. So I'm going to firstly explain why we believe a system reset is needed. And then I'm going to talk about why do it now. And then finally, being a balanced chap that I am, I'm going to give you a counter argument just to give you a glimmer of hope that the work that you've done on your SIEMs and security operations has all been worth it. And then finally, I'm going to dash that hope with a final rebuttal to tell you why we believe it's incredibly important. And I'm going to do that through two pieces of evidence. I'm going to give you a case study of a real customer who's gone through that same journey, ED&F man. And then on my last slide, there's going to be a QR code. That will take you to an ROI calculator, and you yourselves can work out the potential value of this over a 10-year time horizon. But to illustrate the point of why I believe it's important to update systems in the face of demand, actually, we're going to go back about 200 years. This is an illustration of Manchester. At the time, it was known as Cottonopolis. Manchester was one of the biggest cotton textile exporters around the world. But it wasn't always the case. In fact, it had to update its systems to facilitate this great outcome. And so going back about 150 years before this is known as the draw loom, basically. And the point of particular focus for this talk is the 10 to 12-year-old boy whose job it was to sit on top of this draw loom and tug on cords, given instructions by the weaver in order to weave patterns into fabric before automation was even imaginable. As you could imagine, this is very tiresome work. Our ability to concentrate is not great these days, but having to concentrate all day on these complex patterns when one mistake would completely ruin a textile, as you could imagine, was not great work. Unfortunately, at the time, it was absolutely fine in relation to the demand. But for our per draw boy, things were about to change. Global trade routes opened up. Bales and bales of cotton that were once a luxury and a rarity begin to get offloading at the port of Liverpool. They get chucked on horses and carts, transported down to Manchester, and begin to build up in the warehouses of Manchester. But now this cheaper cotton is available. And so pattern clothing has opened up to a whole new class of people where previously it was only the purview of kings and queens and the upper class. That is not great news for our draw boy. All of a sudden, the demand is going up, and it's just not scalable. The system had to be fundamentally reset. Luckily, at the time in the French city of Lyon, this chap existed, Joseph Marie Jacquard, and he created something called the Jacquard loom. And it basically was an amazing invention at the time. This is a picture of one. What it did is it encoded the patterns into punch cards that the loom could read and automatically knew which particular threads to lift. It made it repeatable, it made it scalable, it never got tired, and if it looks reasonably familiar to some of the security or computing geeks in the room, you're absolutely right. It was to go on to inspire this chap, Charles Babbage, Babbage's invention of the analytical engine, and indeed that was the foundation of modern computing and programming. So an absolutely amazing invention for our time. Dave, why are you going on about the textile industry? You're mental. No, hopefully you see the comparison of some of the challenges that we face in security operations. Okay, we've got an exponential data backlog. We're having to weave in many more threads of tools and applications, just like Sarah was talking about. But to do this at scale, repeatably, in a way that delivers resilience, can be error-prone. Security is not, it's not a choice anymore, right? You know, if you want to do business today, you've got to prove you're being good custodians of your customer data. So there's exploding demand. And really, the SIEM is our draw boy, right? Manual correlation rules, manual detection rules. It's not a scalable approach. But why is it not a scalable approach? Well, this graph, I believe, really gets to the crux of the issue. This maps out data being produced, adopted, and consumed over time. When SIEMs were designed, it was probably fine, actually, like 20, 30 years ago, because the data being produced, adopted, and consumed was relatively small. To set this into context for you, if 1 byte equaled 1 grain of rice, you could fill the Pacific Ocean with 1 zettabyte worth of data, okay? So that's the scale of the problem. When I talk about we are focused on finding increasing signal and subtle signal and ever increasing volumes of noise, this gives you an idea of the scale of the problem. So what's the impact in organizations? Well, the compound annual growth rate of an enterprise's data is around 29 to 42%. So compound annual growth is great when it applies to your pension. It's not so great when it applies to your SIEM bill. So if you have to ingest 1 terabyte of data per day, I'd say £2 per gig of data, in the first year it's going to cost you around about this. In year 3, in year 5, by the time you get to year 10, to protect that same estate with the exponential compound annual growth rate, in this case of 30%, all of a sudden it's a wonder why CFOs begin to lose their shit at the bills that are coming in that they have to pay. And so how can we begin to solve this problem? Well, firstly, traditional SIEMs tend to charge you on uncompressed data ingest. That's a bit mental. Most databases compress data somewhere between 5 to 15x. So therefore, passing that cost saving on to the customer is a very good start to begin shaving off some dollars off that bill. The next thing is not all data is treated equally or should be treated equally and to have that charge applied. So actually when we deploy SenseOn, there are 3 data pipelines based on the value and outcome that you're looking for that data that are automatically set up and are charged accordingly and are routed down different routes. So now that you have timely, complete, and consistent data, AI can really go to work. And I'll talk about the levels of AI automation that can be applied in a minute, but all summed up and all together, over a 10-year time horizon, you're looking around about a potential of 50% total savings with modern security architectures such as Data Fabric. Don't take my word for it. Like I said, at the end of this talk, there'll be a QR code that will take you to an ROI calculator that you can apply your own metrics to and to figure out your own cost savings. Now, I was going to talk about AI. So this is the type of advantages that you can get when you have timely, complete, and consistent data in order to find high degrees of signal with an increasing volumes of noise. And so what you see here, the ability to weave in all of your existing tools and to have AI automatically detect subtle attack patterns related to the MITRE ATT&CK framework over long periods of time without human intervention can give you a significant uplift in terms of reducing the noise and increasing the signal in your organization. Additionally, with the advancements of LLMs, you'll see here on the right, having specifically trained LLMs on these patterns to ingest not just the raw telemetry that it's finding from the alerts across your estate, but also with the context and the history of previous notes from case close. So, hey, does this host commonly produce false positives or true positives? The benchmark with this model that we've developed so far is currently at a 9% false positive rate. So that means 9 times out of 10, what the model interprets is actually turning out to be true, with humans having to just correct it 1 out of those 10 times. That's a massive uplift, giving you the opportunity to really deliver the scalability required, similarly to what we talked about at Jacquard's Loom. Now you could go, Dave, come on, SIEMs still have its place. And of course, you'll be absolutely right, but you can still do everything with modern data architectures that you can do here with traditional SIEMs. So let me give you a real-world example and make this concrete. So ED&F Man, they're about a 3,000-person financial services institution. And of course, they were at the point where they really wanted to get control and to deliver what they called a single pane of glass across their estate. And so the options that they considered, and we see many people considering these options at the same time, do we just hire a bigger team? The reason why they dismissed this option is because the people that they would hire would unfortunately still be assessing the low quality of alerts that they were already assessing. So they really wanted to increase the quality of the analyst's work. The second one, do we try to stitch this all together? Like that approach, that Gartner SOC triad approach, was maybe fine when the data volume was low, but is not suitable for this exponential increasing data in the AI era. And then finally, do we just outsource the problem? Of course, that's always an option, of course, but the problem is you would still have to remediate the things that they would be throwing over the fence to you. And so they decided to look at alternative approaches. This was the challenge that they wanted to overcome. And this was the outcome that they delivered after trialing SenseOn. To visualize this, though, really, really simply, over the course of a 14-day POV, it looked like something like this. So they started off with 40 alerts per day. After 2-click integrations with the existing tool stack, I think they had CrowdStrike, they had Vector, they had a few other tools, obviously the Microsoft stack in there as well, we were able to dramatically reduce the false positives. And what this green line represents, interestingly, is the recovered analyst time in hard dollar costs, okay? So by the end of the POV, they were recovering around about £700 per day, which again, I find myself increasingly talking to CFOs during sales cycles. This type of data is incredibly important. So what was the outcome? Well, firstly, they bought the Intelligence Cloud, the Data Fabric, the AI Core, 24/7 next-gen SOC, a predictable outcomes-based pricing depending on the value and outcome that you need for your data, and that was essentially what they ended up paying for. Okay, let me wrap up. Data Fabric, all right, it enables you to collect all of your data and to interweave it very, very simply, these multiple threads together from existing tools, saving substantial costs. AI agents are infinitely scalable. It's time for a system reset, okay? And AI gives you the capability to do that. But of course, it's the human and AI teaming that will overcome the bottlenecks, not just of today, but also the bottlenecks of the future. I appreciate you listening. I said this was the link to the ROI calculator. Any issues using it, the team are out the back and you can come and speak to us. Thank you very much.